Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 92. Singularity. Part 1. Since it was the first time I came to a Dakibi's official post, I looked at some of the documents on the table while Baihyun managed the constellations. Singularity Trend Report. Singularity? The moment I curiously turned a few pages, the documents disappeared into dust. It seemed to be a database system, not real documents. Baihyun looked this way. What are you doing? Nothing. Baihyun saw the powder on the table and looked at me suspiciously. Then he sighed and opened his mouth. Hey, are we okay? Why? Are you regretting it now? That, you know. The constellations that come out using this method will quickly leave. The fallen constellations would return to the Tokyo Dome channel. At that time, Doc Gak's revenge would begin. But that was for then. Besides, you lied before. What the hell are you going to do? What if the subscriptions really reaches 10,000? It is already at 5,000. I shrugged without speaking, and Baihyun continued. Wasn't there a condition for you to not choose a sponsor when you signed the contract with me? How can you say something like this? It will work out somehow. You can also break the contract. I can't do that. Jerk. I risked my life for you, yet you can't do this? Baihyun's expression darkened. That. Indeed, I was a fool to expect anything. I told him, don't worry, I have an idea. Really? Yes, so give me my item. Doc Gak is gone, so shouldn't you hand me the item now? Ah, that's right. Baihyun belatedly manipulated the system. Then after a while, a white coat descended from the air. The clean design carefully paid attention to fashion as well as combat function. I took the coat and checked the pocket first. The special space feature of the infinite dimension space coat is activated. The advantage of this coat was that I could store various items in it without the inventory skill. It was a good item for me since there were many troublesome items to carry such as the Gampyeongui, Dongue Bagum and Magic Power Stove. By the way, it is white unlike the catalog photo. The other color is out of stock. Out of stock. How many of these items were there? Don't you know? This is a mass production item. I checked the options of the items. Plus. Item information. Name, Infinite Dimension Space Coat version 1.1, made by mass production maker. Rating, SSS. Description, a customized coat for returnees. Despite being a mass-produced product, it was mysteriously given a SSS rating. In consideration of the returnees who can't activate the attributes window, the additional subspace function can be activated from the inner pocket of the coat. Of course, the space isn't wide, so use it cautiously. Plus. I looked at it again. Only the subspace could be used, but it had a SSS rating? When considering that the ancient dragon Ignitus's heart had a SS grade. Honestly, it is just due to the influence of the maker. He is a powerful constellation. It made sense. The mass production maker was a famous constellation among returnees. Even if the rating was a bit off, this was one of the best items to get early on. In any case, I received it. Then let's go back. Baihyun flicked his fingers and the surroundings started to change. I blinked once and returned to ground. Han Suyang freaked out and retreated when I suddenly appeared in thin air. Hey! Where the hell did you go? I had to do something for a moment. Was it resolved well? Sometimes Han Suyang had a habit of speaking like this without knowing what happened. Was it a writer's ego? I just nodded. New clothes? Damn, I'm envious. She gazed at the coat I was staring with envious eyes, and then Yu Jonghyuk, who was still unconscious. She looked between Yu Jonghyuk's black coat and my white coat before opening her mouth. By the way, are you a couple? It is just a coincidence. It is a common design. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is delighted for an unknown reason. A constellation who likes to change gender has shining eyes. Come to think of it, there were many unique constellations. Who was the constellation who liked to change gender? Did this constellation appear in Ways of Survival? I thought I should look through the novel soon. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire is controlling the constellation who likes to change gender. Speaking of which, I decided to look at Yu Jong-hyuk. Fortunately, his recovery seemed to be going smoothly. His breathing was stable and his wounds were healing. Let's go quickly. Before this jerk wakes up. Yu Jong-hyuk had fainted with 2 clenched fists. It wasn't hard to imagine what would happen if this guy woke up first. I left Gangdong-gu with Han Soo-young. Yu Sanga was being carried by Han Soo-young's avatar. She was still unconscious from exhaustion. I had gone back to the battlefield where we fought Antinous, but couldn't find Lycaon. There was no body, so he seemed to be alive. I just didn't know why he didn't come to me. He must be severely injured after being struck by the hatching disaster. Han Soo-young looked back at me and asked, "Is it really okay to leave him?" "It's fine. But that is the poisoner. Can you trust her?" The unconscious Yu Jong-hyuk was left with Lee Seolwa. The poisoner originally isn't a bad person. It is due to the parasite. In many episodes where she wasn't infected by the guide, Lee Seolwa was called the doctor rather than the poisoner. Maybe she would be called that in this regression. Take him and go towards Gaebongdong. In the 5603th Military Division, a poor soldier will be waiting for you. I confirmed Lee Hyun-sung's location using Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint and decided to accept Yu Jong-hyuk's advice. I was arrogant to think I could raise my colleagues with my strength. I had a limited time and information, even if I was a complete reader. Therefore, the best trainer for Lee Hyun-sung right now wasn't me, but Yu Jong-hyuk. I'm hungry. Shall we eat that? I pointed to a plant growing around a high-rise building. The 7th grade plant species, Yanasplita, is looking at you. Han Soo-young looked at the huge sunflower's eyes and cried out with fright, "Can we eat that?" "We have to eat it because there is nothing else." According to Ways of Survival, it is quite delicious. It is also a child and easy to hunt. Han Soo-young made a disgruntled expression and soon started to summon her avatars. We cut off the stems and tentacles of the plant species. The Yanasplita was shortly disconnected from its roots and closed its eyes. Once again, I felt like I had become stronger. Even if it was young, a 7th grade species was handled so easily. Han Soo-young. Are you going to eat? I don't know. Then I'll cook. I started cooking the Yanasplita like I had read in Ways of Survival. I peeled off the hard skin of the stem and sprinkled a bit of herb salt that I got from a nearby grocery store. The inside contained pinkish flesh reminiscent of seasonal crab meat. Han Soo-young's eyes shone. What the hell is this? It is a plant, right? That's right. We are eating a salad? Of course not. I'll burn it. I roughly cut off a branch of the surrounding tree, turned the Yanasplita stalk into skewers and put it on the magic power stove. I set the stove to a medium fire, but it took a long time to cook because it was a 7th grade species. I flipped it around a few times and then sprinkled more salt. After some time, the smell of grilling meat filled the area. Hey, can you smell it? Wait, we can't eat it just yet. I stopped her from reaching into the stove and handed her a teacup that had been warming up on the side. Drink this before eating. What is it? Juice from the boiled stem. It needs to be consumed before eating the Yanasplita. Han Soo-young took the cup with a doubtful expression. Then after a while, her expression became impressed. She drank all the juices and started to cut the stem. Eat slowly. This isn't a joke. You can really cook. Maybe only in this ruined world. I laughed because she looked like a 5-year-old child stuffing her face with good food. Some constellations who love cooking are curious about your cooking. Some constellations who like fast progress and violence are complaining. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband says to keep watching. There was 1 week left until the start of the 5th scenario. The burning hell disaster and disaster of questions had been overcome, making the development smooth. Yu Zhonghyuk would take the disaster in the west with Li Hyunsung once he woke up, while the Wanderer King would handle the north. The only thing to be aware of now was the central disaster. I picked up the Yanasplita juice and looked at the still unconscious Yusenga. Yusenga SSI. Was I mistaken? The unconscious Yusenga obviously flinched. I know your mental state right now. Come and eat this. If you don't, I will just eat it. Yusenga didn't rise. Then I heard a growling sound from her stomach. You must be sleeping. Then we will eat this. Ah, too delicious. Wait a minute. Yusenga cried out and rose from her spot. As expected, Yusenga couldn't just lie down after smelling the food. She consumed a lot of stamina, so it was natural for her to be hungry. I glanced over at Han Suyang, who was still eating. Hey. You have eaten a lot, so get up. Why? Do you have to ask? Che. You make people feel uncomfortable. I understand. Maybe Han Suyang knew that Yusenga was already awake. She also knew that Yusenga wouldn't move because of Han Suyang's presence. This girl was really bad. I will go around the area once. Don't eat it all and leave me some. Understood? Han Suyang grabbed a skewer and disappeared into the darkness. Once she completely disappeared, Yusenga slowly approached. The skewer on top of the stove made a delicious cooking sound. I gave the skewer to the hesitating Yusenga. Yusenga accepted it and started biting into it. Yusenga ate 1 skewer and barely managed to open her mouth. Delicious. There were tears in her eyes. Anyone who saw her now wouldn't think she was that girl wielding the daggers. Eat slowly. The 2 daggers at her waist showed that her appearance during the daytime wasn't a dream. It was 1 month since the destruction began. I felt like there was a lot of work to do. Yusenga ate the skewer silently while I also ate while watching her. The skewers were really delicious. It was as if the taste wasn't of this world. Yusenga watched the flames blazing from the stove and muttered, "This is real." Probably. Now we can't go back? Yes, probably. Yusenga's hands faintly trembled. She killed humans with those hands. In order to live, her hands had taken away the lives of others. The hand that had been covered in someone's blood now covered her eyes. Her shoulders intermittently shook. It was probably her last pride that no sobs leaked out. It isn't your fault. I didn't know if my words comforted her or not. I couldn't see Yusenga's heart. Yusenga started to cry. Tears flowed down her face and the skewer she was eating fell to the ground. How much more would she cry? Little by little, her sobs died down. The 7th grade Yanasplita showed a strong sleeping effect when eaten without taking the juices. I looked at her for a while before opening my mouth. It really isn't your fault. These words were for Yusenga. So, at the same time, I spoke words not directed towards Yusenga. I hope to find out who you are, how about it? In the ruined city, the spooky cries of monsters were heard. It seemed like I was talking to myself. I watched Yusenga while asking, "Are you going to pretend?" "I don't know why you are watching me, but haven't you been doing it for a while now?" The white blade of unbroken faith shone in the darkness. I won't hesitate to do anything to reach my purpose. I pushed the white blade towards Yusenga's throat. You better open your mouth quickly. Unless you want your precious incarnation to die. From now on, it was a game of chicken. I waited while gradually pushing the blade towards her throat. The blade was 1 centimeter away from her throat and blood started flowing. All of a sudden, Yusenga's eyes shone. The exclusive skill 4th wall has offset your mental shock. There was a gust of wind and I was thrown away from Yusenga's body. There was a menacing presence that made my heart dull. A faint glow appeared around Yusenga's body. I looked into Yusenga's blurry eyes. Revolving in the pupils, the shadow of a distant nebula was seen. Then a voice like thunder burst inside my head. Insignificant human. I wiped the blood flowing from my mouth and grinned. They finally appeared. The damn constellations of Olympus. Chapter 93. Singularity. Part 2. In the world of ways of survival, the constellation were divided into two types. One type were the free constellations that didn't belong anywhere. The second type were constellations belonging to a particular nebula. A trivial human dares to threaten the great stars? I swallowed my saliva in front of that furious momentum. There were several famous nebulae based on the myths of Earth. There was Asgard from Nordic mythology and Eden from the apocalypse-type mythology. Then there was the equally famous Olympus in front of me. I told them, pick a form. I'm not a devotee. Yusenga's expression changed. The constellations that suddenly descended looked a bit embarrassed, but I kept talking. The probabilities in the beginning scenarios will never allow access to the gods of Olympus. Isn't that right? If the probabilities didn't exist as a balance, the soul area would have already been destroyed by the Olympus 12 descending. The ripple effects of the storm would be huge. Many of the gods of Olympus might look down on it, but they weren't stupid. I saw the threads of magic power wrapped around Yusenga's body. It seems that you are currently the only one who can come out, abandoned lover of the labyrinth. Just like Korea had great constellations, Olympus also had great constellations. In fact, the majority of Olympus were great constellations. The abandoned lover of the labyrinth. This was the modifier for Ariadne, the lover of Theseus. You represent the lowest possible cost, so Olympus must be quite stingy to send you. Shut up. You dare. The magic threads fluttering around her caused the ground to shake. The ground was split apart by the momentum. Indeed, Ariadne couldn't be ignored. No matter how weak the power of her story, she was still stronger than non-constellations. But I knew that she couldn't attack me. Sparks flew in the air. The shackles of probability had moved. It wasn't a full descent, but a large amount of probabilities was consumed when she deprived the will of the incarnation and partially descended. Besides, Ariadne was a constellation belonging to a big nebula. Her movements were bound to be exposed to other powerful beings. The great hall in Seoul's sky was howling. An unprecedented fear filled me, and my whole body got chills. Yusenga's complexion paled due to Ariadne inside her. I don't think you have much time. Shall I get straight to the point? This was the reality of the constellations. They were the strongest of the star stream, but they couldn't throw off the heavy shackles of probability. The gods of other worlds seemed to have noticed you. How can a human know this? Is that important right now? Didn't you come to me for a reason? I don't think the constellations can endure the probability storm that will soon occur. Thunder struck around the great hall. As expected, it was too early for the great constellations to descend. I continued speaking. I will ask 3 questions. If you answer my questions, I will answer your questions. You want to do the 3 questions exchange? Yes. The 3 questions exchange. This was originally the trading style of the constellations to minimize the consumption of probability. Ariadne glared at me with disapproval. A human using the constellations method of trading. Are you going to agree or not? Wait. Yusenga's eyes closed. Perhaps Ariadne was now communicating with the other Olympus constellations through their network. A constellation who doesn't like the excitement to be broken is interested in your proposal. In any case, the Olympus spectators had appeared. Ariadne finished the communication and opened her eyes. I will allow the questions. Then a message was heard. The divine 3 questions and answers has begun. Both sides will exchange 3 questions and answers. All questions should only be answered with the truth. Both sides can refuse to answer one question. The conversation won't end until the questions and answers are fully exchanged. I will ask first. Okay. The first question ticket has been used. 1. Why are you in Usenga's body? Your home is on the other side of the continent, and aren't you busy working on your scenarios? Why this place? It is to monitor the singularities of this world. The first answer has been received. Singularity? Is that your second question? Damn it, she was quite smart. The question ticket disappeared even when the person answered the question vaguely. No. Now you ask. The constellation Abandoned Lover of the Labyrinth has used the first question ticket. What is your identity? Me? I am one of the singularities you are watching. The constellation Abandoned Lover of the Labyrinth has received the first answer. The embarrassed Ariadne muttered. How do you know this? I just guessed I was a singularity. I was just talking, but it ended up being right. Ariadne's eyes narrowed. You. Don't be angry. Don't you guys do it often? A constellation who doesn't like the excitement to be broken is pleased with your wit. Ariadne's atmosphere became filled with killing intent. However, the 3 questions exchange should be done in this way. Those who answered the other person's question straight away would only see a loss. The questions ticket should be used in a useful way while wasting the opponent's question ticket. This was the intense fight of the 3 questions exchange. I continued speaking. The second question ticket has been used. Then this is my second question. What the hell is a singularity? It means beings like you. Ugh, she was using her head. However, this time I couldn't accept this much. Answer it properly. Or do you want to keep spinning in circles? In principle, they are the ones who appear in a divine message. Can you tell me more? I still can't get the hang of it. Ariadne thought for a moment before speaking. We originally didn't mean to monitor you. It is just a coincidence that we found you. A coincidence? We were trying to monitor someone else. He carries the wheel of a giant destiny on his back and destroys the probability. A singularity is such a person. As soon as I heard this, I understood what a singularity was. The second answer has been received. Those from Olympus had already found Yu Zhonghyuk in this regression. An Olympus-level nebula would be able to search through the mass-produced filters and trace the information back. First of all, they had the excellent information tracker in Hermes. In addition, the great constellations would already become aware of the deviation in the world's probabilities due to Yu Zhonghyuk. However, there was something strange. The information about the regressor wasn't information that the current Ariadne could reach. It is my turn for an answer. The constellation Abandoned Lover of the Labyrinth has used the second question ticket. Who will you select in the next sponsor selection? It was an unexpected question. I didn't expect Olympus to be aiming for me. A constellation who doesn't like the excitement to be broken is listening to you. Some constellations that love the Korean peninsula are nervous. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is chanting his own modifier. It was difficult, but I had no choice. I won't answer. Is it any fun if I tell you who I will pick? You have used a refusal ticket. You can't exercise the right to refuse to answer a question from now on. It seemed she had expected this, as Ariadne immediately followed with a question. The constellation Abandoned Lover of the Labyrinth has used the third question ticket. Then I will ask the last question. How did you notice that we were watching? Shit, this was her purpose from the beginning. It was probably the result of Ariadne thinking hard. Simply asking for my identity didn't give an answer, so she created a specific question. I thought for a moment before opening my mouth. I read a book well. What? I found out after reading books. My answer wasn't convincing, but I couldn't reveal the story of ways of survival here. It would all be filtered anyway, making it impossible for her to understand. In addition, I didn't want to explain. Originally, us Koreans know the myths. What does that mean? You are quite famous in my country. You are so popular that children's cartoons are produced. Don't you know that you are quite famous in my country? Is there anyone who doesn't know about Olympus? Ariadne's confusion was conveyed through her shaky eyes. It is impossible. A small country. The Cretan labyrinth. A half-monster. Her eyes became bigger. The lover who forgot you. Naxos Island. The love affair afterwards, shall I continue? Stop. I understand, so stop. The constellation abandoned lover of the labyrinth has received the third answer. Ariadne made a completely wounded expression and closed her mouth. How can humans in a trivial country? I inwardly sighed. I somehow succeeded in overcoming this. Ariadne was a constellation with a low probability cost. It was fortunate that she came out as the representative of Olympus. The movements of the great hall was becoming increasingly restless. I opened my mouth, then this is the last question. What is the content of the divine message you received this time? Ariadne worried about it for a long time while her eyes looked like she was measuring an invisible scale. I can't tell you. The constellation abandoned lover of the labyrinth has used the refusal ticket. All questions and answers have been fully exchanged. The 3 questions and 3 answers have ended. I expected it, but I felt sorry. In fact, the last question was the most important. A constellation who doesn't like the excitement to be broken has a taste of regret. Ariadne looked at the lightning bolts falling from the sky and frowned. My husband was curious about your story and I gave him a bit of entertainment, but it ends here. Her voice started to accelerate like she realized she had no time. I only came here for one reason. Olympus will give you a stern warning. Don't hinder our work. We are working to prevent the destruction of the world. This woman will grow into a breakwater of the great destruction. Why this woman? Looking for the reason is pointless. Even the 3 sisters who spin the thread of fate don't know why. Damn. Olympus used the excuse of the fates. Incarnation caught in the scenario. The direction of fate is turning. The stories of the stars are gathering in one place and the fate of the constellations will begin. What are you talking about? Are you referring to Gigantomachia? You even know this information. You are really amazing. But even if you know this information, you shouldn't arrogantly think that you understand everything. The sparks around Usanga's body were reaching the limit. It was the sign of a probability storm. You, a puppet of the moment, will never understand. Remember. Once the time comes, if you aren't standing on the right side. At that moment, a lightning bolt struck Usanga's body and I felt Ariadne's power draining out of her. The sound of tearing through space and time resonated and Usanga's body collapsed like a broken doll. I hurriedly grabbed Usanga's body. Then I felt someone's gaze from the sky. I shouldn't raise my head right now. Nobody told me this, but I instinctively knew. If I looked above me. The exclusive skill 4th wall has offset your mental shock. I looked up with confusion. There was something in the distant great hall. It was a presence that destroyed Ariadne's power. It seemed to be a tongue or a tentacle, but in the end, it didn't resemble anything. It was a fear that was beyond language and it was unable to be comprehended. A god from another world. Time seemed to slow and sweat soaked my forehead and back. It was a flow of time filled with breathless pain. I barely blinked and the great hall returned to normal. I trembled with fear. This thing was what I had to fight. I saw Han Suyang running towards me in the distance. The roar of agitated monsters filled the moonlit night and the screams of humans came as they were intermittently hit by lightning. There were several scenarios related to the end. Ragnarok. Gigantomachia. Armageddon. I didn't know what Ariadne was talking about, but it was certain that something was different from what I knew. This was what I wanted. I could never reach the end I wanted if it flowed like the original story. I carefully laid down the collapsed Usanga. It felt like her flesh would break if I touched it. Usanga's face was pale and she had a tight clenched fist, as if she didn't want to support her sponsor. Humans were weak. However, there was one thing overlooked by the stars, who were only afraid of a great probability. It was that all the myths on Earth started from the weak humans they ignored. I gently touched my fist to Usanga's fist. In the depths of your soul, the power of the story is wriggling. Your first stigma is ready to germinate. I would build a story that didn't fall to any myths. At this time, a silver wolf was running through the darkness. Keek, damn wolf. Parasite Queen Antinous frowned as she looked at her body. The newest body she required was an immuntar. Of course, it was a situation where she just survived. Her body was torn by the probability storm and she would have died if Lycaon hadn't been lying unconscious nearby. Her instinct of survival saved her. It was only possible because she was a parasitic species. Black blood poured from Lycaon, who was hit by a fragment of the disaster. The guides had a body that couldn't resist the disasters. Now Antinous didn't have much time left. I need a new host. Antinous shook as she thought of the men who killed the disaster of questions. Those humans prevented the disaster that destroyed her planet. She was desperate in front of the unbelievable sight and decided again. She would get revenge through any means. She would exterminate the humans who destroyed her home, Kronos. At this moment, her antennae reacted. This aura? A familiar aura was felt. It was a power that she felt from the insect king species found on Kronos in the past. Antinous increased her pace. If she infected a person with this potential, revenge wasn't impossible. Finally, Antinous reached the location and encountered an unexpected being. She couldn't believe it. How was this presence on Earth? Keek. She instinctively made a sound and the boy's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. You will be the first insect. The boy, Li Gilyung, laughed at Antinous. Chapter 94. Singularity. Part 3. It was already morning when I opened my eyes. Han Suyang saw me wake up and smiled. She was the last person keeping guard. Did you have a nightmare? A little bit. The embers of the firewood burning all night was white. I put out the fire and touched my forehead, which had a splitting headache. The scene that I saw through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Gilyung, I didn't know if he was okay. Where is Usanga SSI? She went to scout. Han Suyang answered while touching her smartphone. I asked her, what are you looking at? A novel. Your novel? What other novel would I look at? Indeed, it would be strange to read other novels under these circumstances. I always wondered, is it fun for a writer to read what they wrote? It is very fun. Even though you know all the details? I actually asked without thinking, but Han Suyang gave me an unexpected answer. I sometimes feel that the story is different despite reading the same thing. What? A writer doesn't have complete mastery of the novel. There are many holes whenever I look back. In the end, reading is the process of keeping the irregular holes in place. I really don't know what you're talking about. It means that after some time, I can see it as someone else's writing. Ultimately, every human is their own writer. The words were unexpected and I felt surprised. Han Suyang was able to say such a difficult thing. I told her, come to think of it, you are like that. You really wrote someone else's novel. Han Suyang yelled something back, but I blocked my ears for a while. Who told her to plagiarize in the first place? Han Suyang turned off her smartphone and asked me, by the way, what are you going to do next? What will I do? I will wait for the start of the next scenario. Who would believe that? I'm sure you have a plan. She seemed to have something to say, so I let her speak. In fact, she kept on talking anyway. Yu Zhonghyuk is taking charge of the west and the Wanderer King is handling the north. What about the center? We will stop it all together. Isn't there an easy method? Have you forgotten? I stopped for a moment and stared at Han Suyang. Did you copy that as well? When did I do that? I just came up with it in my novel. Han Suyang fumbled with her words while pouting. In any case, aren't I right? As far as I know, there is an easy way to prevent the disaster in the center. Certainly, her words were right. If we did that, we could clear the fifth scenario and prevent all disasters without difficulty. Han Suyang looked at me with piercing eyes. Are you going to do it? Let's think about it on the way. I looked around and saw Yusenga waving her hand in the distance. Han Suyang grumbled, why do you look so happy after seeing her? It is because she is a trustworthy person. Che. Untrustworthy people will survive. We set out again. There were 5 days remaining until the start of the scenario. We moved west along the Han River. There were 2 purposes behind this. One was to look for the missing Gong Pildu around Han River, and the second was to collect coins from nearby monsters. More than anything else, it was currently a coin event, so I should gain as much as possible. Yusenga SSI, to the left. Han Suyang, take the lead. We hunted all the visible 7th grade monsters. Once Yusenga joined us, we were able to hunt 7th grade species, and even 6th grade. I had a thought while watching Yusenga. Maybe she didn't know about those from Olympus. I called them out to figure out their intentions. They had used up their assigned probability, and couldn't interfere with Yusenga for the time being. The battle ended and I approached Yusenga. Yusenga SSI. You should only use 1 stigma at a time in the future. I'm sorry. Was I a big problem last time? No, that isn't the reason. The people supported by a nebula were special. Of course, being sponsored by a nebula didn't mean all constellations in the nebula would support her. However, the laws of the star stream applied to the constellations and incarnations. The price for going against the laws would eventually be returned to the constellations and incarnations. The constellations might have a way to escape, but the problem was the incarnations. Using multiple stigmas will place a burden on Yusenga SSI's body. The damn Olympians wouldn't tell her this, but there was a limit to the story that a single being could afford. Every stigma contained the history of the constellation, and the random blend of histories would impair the human spirit. If Yusenga borrowed the stigmas of a large number of constellations, her remaining vitality would be reduced in an instant. Then in probably 1 year. Yusenga smiled faintly. Thank you for your concern. I realized something and opened my mouth. Did you already know? Yusenga's eyes moved downwards, and she spoke quietly, Dr. SSI, do you still think that I'm a competent office worker? Yusenga continued speaking. I'm different from Dr. SSI. I can't do anything in this changed world. This is a world where the TOEIC, degrees, and service scores are useless. I wondered, do you think everything can be resolved if you become stronger? A little bit. Her words were correct. In fact, strength only made up for some of the world's problems. I have decided to build up useful specifications of this world. That is the only thing I can do. There were numerous wounds on the back of Yusenga's hand as she spoke. The wounds felt like a big hole for me. Han Suyang had said, in the end, reading is the process of keeping the irregular holes in place. If there was something a reader had to do, I needed to read it properly. I felt a vibration in my arms. I opened my smartphone and saw that there was a notification window. Han Dong-hoon, Hyung, are you okay? The Hermit King of Shadows, Han Dong-hoon. I was stunned when I read the message. Han Dong-hoon, I haven't been able to connect to the internet recently, so the messages are delayed. I am struggling with my ability. He had been sending messages for a long time and they stacked up. It seemed the piled-up messages arrived at the same time once the internet connected. I showed the messages to Yusenga in order to change her mood. I looked at Yusenga's smile and thought. I wasn't a completely incompetent reader. I connected to Han Dong-hoon through the messenger, but I could hear news about other people through it. Han Dong-hoon, I am on the Yongsan-gu side. There is also Gil-young. Kim Dokja, Gil-young is there? Han Dong-hoon, yes. The location of my main party were roughly grasped. Lee Hyun-sung and Yong Hee-won's positions were also confirmed through Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. I was a bit curious about what happened to young Minseob and Lee Sungkook, but it was difficult to care about them. They had some prior knowledge, so they should manage. Lee Jaihai, well, Yu Jonghyuk would take care of it. Kim Dokja, for the time being, don't leave Yongsan. I'll be there soon. If possible, try contacting other people. A reply didn't come back. Perhaps it had disconnected again. I looked around at the party members and said, I think we'll have to cross the river. Currently, we were south of Han River. North of Han River was Yongsan-gu. We have to cross that? Han Soo-young asked me with a dumbfounded expression. It wasn't strange. I looked at Han River with her. Flickering shadows could be seen from the swirling water. The ichthyosaurs that had traveled near Dongo Bridge had once again filled Han River. We had been following the river, but I never thought of crossing because of them. Have you seen Chonho Bridge? It is broken. The ichthyosaur was a 7th grade monster species. It wasn't a problem to hunt, but there were too many. It wasn't just one or two, so it would take a few days to deal with all of them. We were going to cross Han River in such a situation? It was unthinkable. We will move along the river. There might be a place that isn't broken. We moved along the river for several hours, but an intact bridge couldn't be found. Instead, we found a group of wanderers. Han Soo-young was going to raise her weapon, but Yusenga moved first. She took meat out of her backpack, making Han Soo-young irritated. What are you doing? The people are hungry. So what? You want to share that? Are you crazy? Don't you know that people are the most dangerous existences in an apocalypse? I can kill all of them if I want. Han Soo-young saw killing intent for a moment on Yusenga's face and shut her mouth. Therefore, I can save all of them if I want. Yusenga took the meat from the monsters and distributed it to the people. Some people felt sorry and bowed to her. This. It is just leftovers. It doesn't matter. I left Han Soo-young alone and pulled a Yanasplita stem out of my bag. It wasn't possible for everyone to become a hunter in this world. By now, there would be a great deal of research about the monster species all over the world. The man who received the plant for meat bowed deeply. Thank you. It's nothing. Difficulties should be shared. Of course, I was essentially a different person from Yusenga. All my good deeds were planned activities. A few people have a great liking towards you. Your understanding of the character Shin Yuan has increased. Your understanding of the character Ma Kangcheol has increased. New characters have been added to your bookmarks. Han Soo-young said sarcastically, you're a fake. Sometimes I do good things. The constellation Demon-like Judge of Fire is impressed with your good deed. 400 coins have been sponsored. Han Soo-young grumbled as she watched Yusenga. Damn, she is like a woman from a novel. I agreed with her words. Yusenga was like the heroine of a novel even before the fall of the world. Now that reality had become a novel. From among the crowd, a child approached me. She was a young girl around the same age as Gil Young. What is it? The girl who bowed had a Western look. Her eyes were bright and her face was full of an exotic cuteness. The child bowed 90 degrees towards me. Thank you. She was a very polite child. I looked around but didn't see anyone who looked like this child's parents. The child noticed my gaze and said, they aren't here anymore. Both of them? The child nodded. I was a bit confused. A child without a guardian survived alone until the 5th scenario. It was almost impossible in ways of survival. Wait a minute? The moment I used character list, the child spoke again, then I'll be going. Did she come just to thank me? I tried to grab the child and reflexively looked back at Han Soo-young. She happened to be looking elsewhere. Be careful. It would soon be dark. I worried for a moment before summoning the party members together. We will rest here today. We looked for a place to sleep. Han River was cold even when we lit a fire, so we decided to use a partially destroyed building. Han Suyang became firmly determined and warned Yu Sanga. Just watch. Those people from earlier will be back. Didn't you see them covet our weapons? They will clearly bite the hand that fed them. Han Suyang declared that all humans were wicked and trash who would repay goodness with malice. I carefully looked at Yu Sanga, who said, "Not every person in the apocalypse is bad. No, they are all bad. Almost everyone is bad." 1 hour passed. They'll come soon. Then you will be crying. 2 hours passed. They are patient people. 3 hours passed. Is this possible? Finally, 4 hours later, noises started to be heard outside. Yu Sanga's expression darkened and Han Suyang smiled with satisfaction. Look, what did I say? Han Suyang had just taken out her weapon when someone entered the building. Hello? Han Suyang stopped as she was about to get up. The one who came was a young girl. It was the child who politely thanked me during the day. The little red-eyed child held something out. This. It was a blanket. She must have grabbed it from the area because she was afraid we were cold. Han Suyang made a surprised expression while Yu Sanga looked blank. In the apocalypse, goodwill wasn't always repaid with malice. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is making a loving smile. 2,000 coins have been sponsored. Yu Sanga acted as the representative of the party. Thank you, I'll use it well. Yes. By the way, are you alone? It is dangerous to wander around at night. It is the same everywhere. Yu Sanga's expression darkened at the words. Would you like to stay with us? Huh? It will be fine if you are with us. Yu Sanga looked at me like she was asking for permission. However, the child's answer was faster. I don't want to be a nuisance. It happened when the child was trying to run away. A flag flew from somewhere and fell in front of the child's feet. The frightened child fell down and Han Suyang's scathing voice followed. Wait a minute. You can't leave. What are you doing right now? Yu Sanga looked at Han Suyang and spoke in a cold voice. However, Han Suyang was looking at me. Kim Dokja, don't you know what to do? Isn't that why you wanted to sleep here? I slowly closed my eyes. Damn, she had noticed. It was a miscalculation. I didn't know this person could use detect attributes. Han Suyang asked, are you going to act as a hypocrite? Is it because the other person is a child? The other person is a child? Then the villain must solve it. Han Suyang approached and Yu Sanga blocked the way. Stop. Get out of the way. Do you want me to kill you? Why are you killing an ordinary kid all of a sudden? An ordinary kid? Han Suyang laughed and pointed towards the child. I told you to stop. At the same time, Yu Sanga's dagger pointed to Han Suyang's neck. Then Han Suyang summoned dozens of avatars. Han Suyang grumbled. Kim Dokja, explain it quickly. Before I turn around and kill everyone. It ended up like this. I sighed and opened my mouth. This child. The child looked up at me with innocent eyes, and I felt a sense of urgency. 5 days later, she will destroy Seoul. Yu Sanga's eyes shook. If Han Suyang hadn't found out, I might have let it pass by, but now it couldn't be helped. This damn scenario never gave us the happy endings we wanted. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is smiling. Many constellations are interested in the development of this scenario. It had been a long time since the messages of the constellations seemed so hateful. This child is the last disaster of the 5th scenario.